Coastal Carolina's head coach Tim Beck talks about year one and heading into year two following spring ball. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, so we are starting to get some more head coaches. We have had Will Hall and Ricky Ronnie, so pretty good there, wrapping up spring ball in Hattiesburg and in Norfolk. So let's head back out to Conway, our second Coastal Carolina coach in about a week after Gary Gilmore last week from the baseball team. Tim Beck, longtime assistant coach, had his first chance at being a head coach. So we'll find out what he thought about that. How did that go? Also making the adjustments. He had an interesting reason about what happened there because it appeared they were going with what Tim Beck wanted to do. That didn't really work. And so they went back to what Grayson McCall was good at until Grayson got hurt. And then they had to go back to what the other quarterbacks were good at. So lots to discuss. We talk about, trying to deal with a roster and how long that takes. And, does he get a chance to take a break, catch his breath? And, of course, heading into year two. So lots to do. He is the head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. He is Tim Beck on Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's get a recap of what happened in Conway, South Carolina with the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. He is Tim Beck. He's been on the show a couple of times already. He's only had the job for about a year and a half, so we appreciate him coming back on to preview the 2024 season. But before we do that, Coach, I'd like to go back. It was your first year as a head coach, certainly a little bit of a roller coaster ride. What was your experience as a first-year head coach after having so many years as an assistant head coach?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning experience for sure. Each and every game, each and every situation, was new. We had a brand new staff, never worked together before, brand new conference we never played in before, new system, both on offense and defense. So there was a learning curve by everybody, right? From our ops people and trainers and dietitians and people of that nature, traveling, staying in a hotel, whatever it is, bussing, whatever it was. And so I thought it was a huge success. It was a great learning experience. And, you obviously feel better about the future because at least we've covered some of those type of things.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was the Marshall game. I could be wrong. I think Grayson was already out. Were you did your fourth string quarterback play like one play in that game? I think you were up next to play quarterback.
Yes, I was. I disappeared for a little bit, got loose. Had to go back there and throw a little bit. He did. I can't remember if it was Marshall. It might have been Texas State.
Maybe it was Texas State. I know it was in the rain. Yeah, maybe it was
Texas State game that we had to put Blake in there and on a 3rd and 2 through a slant for a first down.
There you go.
Yeah, it was and that was the trying thing too. But we did a really good job. The offensive staff, Coach Trickett. I mean, they did a tremendous job of getting everybody prepared, and our players were very resilient in terms of, it was just next man up. Whoever we had to go out there and play, they went out there and did a really good job.
So as a coach, you got to love that because now it's one thing for you to say it. You got to be ready. You got to be ready. You got to be ready. And see, I told you got to be ready. You may have to go in there. And I know it happened with Chandler Fields against Arkansas State. Chris got hurt and he completed a 3rd and 14 coming in cold. So when you have that as an example, it must go over well with the kids. That's almost like an I told you so beforehand.
Yeah, no doubt. It's anytime you could get that proof, that what I call testimony, right? There's always theory. Hey, be ready, be ready, be ready. This might happen, and I call that theory. Testimony, it's happening. You got to get out there and do it. And the perfect example I always go back to was Cardell Jones. He started the season as the third string quarterback at Ohio State and ended up winning the national championship for him. So, and a great story it was, but he had to be ready, and his team needed him. I call it competitive excellence. Make sure you're ready when your team needs you.
He's Tim Beck, head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, so you're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of felt like what we were watching with Coastal Carolina, and like you said, it was all new, but it seemed to be the Tim Beck system, and then somewhere along the way, you're like, all right, let's run Grayson back to what he was more comfortable with, and that seemed to be more effective, at least until, Grayson got backed up, almost like you went back to, all right, I'd rather do it my way, but this way seems to work. Because some of that, I don't even know what you call it, the RPO triple option stuff is really hard to defend.
Yeah, I think, honestly, we had all of that stuff in, right? It was all part of the arsenal. We worked it. We were figuring out what we can do, what we were good at doing. It's one thing to go through spring ball and fall camp and figure you think you might know, and then it's another to go through the season. And you start to learn about the team. You start to learn about opponents, the conference. And so what we did, I think we just narrowed our focus down. We had those plays, we had those things really, and it was on both sides of the ball. And part of my thought was after the Georgia Southern loss was, let's just get back to basics. Let's get simple. Let's narrow what we want to do and how we want to do it. I don't think it was a change in philosophical difference. I just think it was this is who we're going to be right now. And I think really good offensive coordinators do that, right? They're going to find out what their team could be good at, and then that's what they're going to do. And I really believe that because we were new, A, as a staff, and all figuring each other out as a staff, B, the players, C, the conference, it took a little bit. Once we kind of figured out this is kind of who we're going to be. I really even felt, even though we lost the Georgia Southern game, we played well enough to potentially win. We just didn't make enough plays. We had a lot of turnovers in the game. They had a fake punt. We dropped interceptions we should have had. If we just made a couple of plays here and there, you probably win the game. But, woulda, coulda, shouldas, right? They're all what they are. So I think we started to realize at that point we were kind of on the right track. And the bye week, that little time off, gave us some extra time to just take a breath and go back and say, what have we been doing good? Let's keep doing that.
And then, obviously Grayson's a special talent. So then how do you adjust based on, the quarterbacks that you had to play, knowing – we got to do what they can do. They can't necessarily do what Grayson does.
Right. And that's what you saw, right? You saw when Jared Guess had to play against Marshall. There wasn't a philosophical necessarily change, what we felt like we needed to do to win the game, but maybe there was some play calling differences, right?
Sure.
And when Ethan had to play, same thing, right? We still were philosophy doing kind of the same things, but maybe some of the play calls were just a little bit different. So I really, again, tribute the offense and Coach Trickett and those guys to sitting down and going, here's what we need to do to win. Here's what we're doing well. Here's what the quarterback can handle, and simplify it and let him go play. So I really think that was a big help in that run for, I don't know how many wins that was. That got us back in it.
And then how do you go about with that with the quarterback? I presume someone's got to ask the quarterback, what do you feel comfortable with? And let's see what we got, because again, you don't want to put the round peg in the square hole, because, we run one thing, these guys, it's kind of like, a golfer, you got to be all in on the shot. If you don't like this shot with this club, it's not going to go the way you want to. And if, we want to run this play, but you're not confident doing it, kind of like Sunshine and, remember the Titans, if you can't make the pitch, we're going to run something different.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a big part of it, but you got to be careful asking them, right? They think they can do everything.
Well, sure.
Like,
Well, that's where practice comes in. You can find out what they can and can't do in practice.
Yeah, it's like asking receivers. They're always open. Just ask them.
Sure.
They're always open. Right. So, that's part of the coaching element too, is us to be able to determine, hey, he's really good at doing this, or we need to, tweak this a little bit or whatever. So, and injuries obviously play a part in that, right? Hey, we're going to run the ball and you're missing 3 linemen and 2 running backs. If that happens, like, it's probably not good, right? So
Right.
I think all of those things kind of come into play for us. And, but we learned our team. Now, granted, in this day of age with transfer portal and the way things are, the team's going to change again. Like, I don't even know what our team's going to look like until August. So you're still going to have to figure it out, right? That's going to be the key. And for us to be able to make those assessments faster, and we know the conference a little bit now, we kind of know each other a little bit more. Things are running smoother. There's not as many questions. What do we do about this, that? Everybody kind of gets it now, and we're starting to run like a well-oiled machine. So we could dive in and be a little bit more observant, maybe be able to make these adjustments quicker.
All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back and have more of our conversation with head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, Tim Beck. He talks about competition in spring camp and how to go about self-scouting now that other teams have a year under their belt of film of Tim Beck's systems. But first, let me tell you about Monopoly Go and Gametime. We've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win, and that's when you dig deep. Lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game. Pull off some bank heists and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash mobile hit game, Monopoly Go. Lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with a ton of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball and charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now, free in the App Store or Google Play. And Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down closer to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You get those priority last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You get zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And you get the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's continue our conversation with the head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. He is Tim Beck. Talks about the competition in spring camp and how to go about self-scouting. We're talking to Tim Beck, head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, so let's move ahead. A couple of quarterbacks left. Did that make your decision easier? Grayson left, and I think Jared left. So, I mean, heading into spring, it was Ethan Vasco. Is it his job? Is there competition? Why don't you recap how spring football went? Now you got a chance to breathe, right? I mean, I love the whole idea of how fast this thing goes, from being named head coach to a recruiting class to getting spring ball ready to moving the family, and all of a sudden, it's fall practice. Now you get a little bit of time to breathe, where all that other stuff is done, and you can kind of concentrate on football. What was spring football like this year for the Chanticleers?
Yeah, I will say this, that breathing part where we get a rest, I don't know if that's necessarily true.
Well, I'm glad you're doing this now. I'm glad you're doing this now, because I got a feeling someone's going to go on a little bit of a break here in about a week or so. So I appreciate your time.
the transfer portal and all the stuff going on right now. It's a zoo right now. But no, I think spring was great. At a lot of positions, we have competition. Offensively, we graduated key players, right? Sam Pinckney, we lost Jared in the portal. We lost CJ in the portal. Reese graduated. So, yeah, Grayson and Jared left. So there was some key elements offensively that we lost that we have to replace. They're talented players, hungry. I think there's a sense of, they love it. I do. I'm really impressed with our guys and our practice and how it's been. This is a different team. It's a hungry football team. They have something to prove, I think. When you have a veteran football team like we did, there's a lot of, hey, we've done this before. Like, kind of, we can show up, and you lose a little bit, maybe of that edge, maybe that hunger, that desire. So I like it. And defensively, we still got a lot of our key component and elements back defensively. So I'm really impressed with the retention, the physicality, our tackling, all the things that we felt like we needed to be better at. We were, and I think we'll continue to get better at them. So obviously there's injuries. There's what I call the post-season surgeries, right? There's always guys that play. They go through the season, they're beat up, but they give it their all. And then when the season's over, they got to get fixed. So, we had some of those guys, or rested some of those guys, maybe not gave them as many reps because they were recovering from high ankle sprains or broken, wrist or whatever it is. So it's hard to tell because your team's really not in place yet. It won't be till August. But it was a great.
Right. Okay. So then how do you go about, I always wonder this, how do you go about self-scouting? I know there's a quarterback change, so the offense will probably look a little bit different, what Ethan Guest can do. We've been over that compared to Grayson McCall. But how do you self-scout? Kind of like, we were a little bit predictable doing this, and so, we have to tweak this because now people have film on what, Tim Beck likes to do, right? They looked at where your previous stops were, but now they know what you like to do moving forward, and they saw Ethan play. How do you self-scout offensively and defensively to tweak that to be able to, like you said, you went through the Sun Belt and you got a better idea of what is out there. So how do you self-scout, yourself?
Yeah. Well, I do believe you kind of do it as the year goes on too. You're always trying to, in particular things, your down and distance stuff, your situational football, you're always self-scouting to see what tendencies you might have. Everybody has tendencies, doesn't matter, right? It's just the way football is and how you align formationally or how you align defensively. You're constantly learning. You're constantly growing as a coach. Part of the growth is to simplify, right? Get really good at some things. Part of the growth is to tweak and add something unique, something different. And we're doing that. We're doing a little bit of both to be able to make sure that A, our guys know what to do and can play really hard and really fast, and B, we have enough tools in the toolbox to give them a competitive advantage. So it's a happy medium to be able to do that, and you just got to kind of get a feel where your guys are in terms of how they're practicing and how they're going. We look at all the stuff in the off season, we evaluate it, but every team's going to be different. Every staff sometimes change. Offenses are going to be, defense are going to be. You might have better cover corners. You're going to play more man. You might have bigger guys that can play zone. You're going to play zone. It just depends on your team.
And so now it really is different. All these years you've been around college football trying to build a program, it is more like a year-to-year deal. It's tough to build even over a couple of years, which makes it tougher for you guys, you people, because the expectations are higher because it can be fixed allegedly faster than it can be before. Usually, right, you get the 5-year deal and you get 2 or 3 years to come in there and put your handprint on it, hand stamp on it. But now it's like, well, see, all these other teams are doing it. And so you're expected to compete at that high level because it is a year-to-year process now.
Yeah, I don't know whose job's harder, ours doing it or yours, because you have to try to preseason who's going to win the conference.
Oh God.
Because everybody changes. Everybody.
Right.
We may have up to 50 new players on the team again, and so
Goodness.
how do you sit there and say, well, Coastal's going to do this because of this guy or this guy? Nobody knows for sure how it's all going to work out, right? So the biggest thing that we try to do is we try to find guys that fit us, our OKGs, right? Our kind of guys that come in and love football, tough, competitive guys that are going to play really, really hard, love each other, right? And want to win. And so we look for those guys, and then we build the team. You got to build camaraderie. You got to build brotherhood through discomfort. You got to build those things, right? And so the faster the team can come together, the greater chance that you have to have success when you have a bunch of new players. You're not going to know that until you put them in the heat of a battle in the competition. So it gets very, very, very challenging. And you do everything you can as a coach to number one, keep the players you got. Number two, keep the culture you got. But number three, fill the holes with players that can help you win. And so you got to balance your time, your energy into all three of those things. And you got to have good assistants. You got to have really good assistants to help you.
So, okay, let's take one last time out. We'll come back, wrap up our conversation with the head coach of Coastal Carolina, Tim Beck. He'll talk about trying to learn what might be 50 new players in the program come fall camp and the opportunity for the Sun Belt now that the college football playoff will expand to 12 teams. We'll do that right after I tell you about FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with head coach of Coastal Carolina, Tim Beck, talking about trying to learn all the new players' names on his team and the opportunity for the Sunbelt with a playoff expanding to 12 teams. So how long does it take to learn all the new players? And that's not even including the freshmen who are going to show up at the end of July, beginning of August.
Yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, when you count freshmen, walk-ons, everybody – you're probably talking 60 new guys, probably half your team.
Is there a process for you to learn how to do that?
There isn't, and it's funny because even as a coordinator and stuff, this is so new. You never really had to do that. Right. You never had to do that. You just coach your guys. And again, bulk of your room is going to be, right? If you got whatever, you got 12 D linemen, you still might have 8 of the 12 and you got 4 new ones, right? Or whatever. So it's not like the whole room gets blown up, but the 4 guys coming in may be able to help you and play. And
sure.
So, but they got to fit in and learn and grow. Well, you can't stump the growth of the other guys too. And I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. That's why it's never ending. When you say you can take a breath, no, you can't.
Right. You're going on vacation and you're bringing a roster with the numbers to make sure you know who the players are.
I mean, looking at transfer portal guys, making recruiting calls. I mean, it is like, it's funny. You come home and you think, oh, come home and have a nice dinner. No, you're on a phone.
All right, a couple more minutes here with Tim Beck, head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers on a Locked On Sunbelt. All right, I know this. So Billy Napier went through it, right? It's not only learning his team, but learning the conference. And you said the same thing. And, the Sunbelt is a tough football conference, right? John Summerall comes in here, and he's the guy who ruined it for you, right? He comes in here and wins 2 Sunbelt championships in his first 2 years. You get Kurt Signetti with JMU, and I know they had their, they got to, get their 2 years in before they can, but they're dominating on that side. What did you learn about the Sunbelt that maybe was a little bit surprising to you because, you're coming from, being an assistant in Power 5 clubs?
Well, I knew it was a good conference. I knew it was well coached. I knew there's good football players there. That part coming in, I knew. I didn't know how we stacked up with everybody talent-wise, number one. And so I think that was something to figure out. A lot of places I've been in the past, to some degree, right? Ohio State was, but Texas, when I got there, we were rebuilding Texas. I mean, the first year we went 7-5, went to a bowl game. They hadn't been to a bowl game in 3 years. So, like, it wasn't what we think of Texas is today. We had to turn the program around and build it up. And when we got there, Nebraska had gone through a bad streak under Callahan, when we got there. So, Kansas never had been. North Carolina State was coming off a 4-8 season when I got there. So, coming into a program and kind of seeing where we're at, how do we compare, knowing it's a good conference, knowing there's good players, knowing everybody's coached very well was one of the biggest things to try to learn and get a feel. And also realizing we're talented enough that you could play with anybody. You could really play with anybody. And so sometimes you can overcoach and you can over game plan, you can over scheme when you see something and feel like, hey, we need this to win. Why? Because of the places that you've come from. You've had to do that before to win those games. But maybe you don't have to do that quite as much. It goes back to the earlier thing, simplifying, finding what works, but have enough in the system to be able to tweak it, to give them enough tools to potentially have success. And so that's been the focus in the offseason for us as coaches.
All right, let's wrap things up with head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, Tim Beck. Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Expectations coming into to 2024, right? The playoff is 12 teams. It's an opportunity for a Sunbelt team with having one of those special seasons to get in to the playoff. What are your expectations heading into this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tremendous, end of the season goal. Would be awesome to have the opportunity to be able to do that. But honestly, we gotta be better, right? We gotta be more consistent. We gotta just try to, win game after game, get better every single week, have great leadership, great teammates, keep building it from the inside out, have great cohesiveness and unity with our football team. Like, I've got these small term, short goals to get accomplished, because I think if we can do those things, then we can start talking about championships and we can start talking about the bowl playoffs and all those types of things. But right now, we're not in a position to do that. We're in a position right now, we just got to get better. We got to keep recruiting hard, find the right guys to come in, help our football team get better, build a really competitive, tight, close unit. Because I like this team. I like the hunger that this football team shows. I like the talent this football team shows. So we got a chance. I like where we're at right now. We're where we need to be right now in April.
He's Tim Beck, head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Really appreciate your time, Coach. Hopefully you get a chance to breathe a little bit. We will hopefully see you in New Orleans for Sunbelt Media Days. Really appreciate your time. Thanks you so much, Coach.
You got it, Dave. Appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend.